Niagara Falls has long captivated those seeking adventure, but behind its awe-inspiring beauty lies a darker tale, one of tragedy, loss, and the ill-fated attempts of those who sought to conquer or defy its mighty force. Over the years, many have been drawn to the falls, lured by the promise of fame, glory, or an escape. These are the stories of those who paid the ultimate price for their audacity, for daring to approach the falls too closely. It was a warm July morning in 1930 when George Stathakis, a 46-year-old Greek immigrant living in Buffalo, New York, set out on what would become a fateful and tragic adventure. Unlike most men of his time, George had a vision, a dream to prove to the world that he could survive a fall over the majestic Niagara Falls in a specially designed barrel. He believed that this death-defying stunt would not only make him famous, but would also give him the platform to share his ideas about life, the afterlife, and the extraordinary potential of human will. George spent months meticulously crafting a barrel of his own design. Made of oak and reinforced with steel, the massive barrel weighed nearly 2,000 pounds and was designed to withstand the immense pressure and force of the fall. At 10 feet long and 5 feet wide, the barrel had an interior equipped with oxygen tanks and supplies that he believed would help him survive the ordeal. It was a daring plan, one that only someone with an unyielding sense of purpose would dare attempt. George wasn't alone on this journey. Accompanying him was his pet turtle, Sonny Boy, a 150-year-old creature that symbolized George's belief in his plan. The bond between George and Sonny Boy was a testament to his conviction that the stunt would not only make him famous, but would be a triumph over the forces of nature itself. When the lid of the barrel was secured, George could hear the roar of the falls echoing through the woods, the noise growing louder as the barrel was set free. As the barrel drifted towards the precipice, the crowd gathered to witness the event. The moment the barrel disappeared over the falls, there was a collective gasp. The drop was 167 feet, a height from which most people would never return. Remarkably, the barrel survived the drop, emerging at the base of the falls mostly intact. However, things soon took a tragic turn. The barrel became trapped in the turbulent currents behind the falls, violently spinning and rocking, rendering any rescue attempt impossible. For 22 agonizing hours, rescuers battled the rapids in a desperate bid to reach the barrel, but when they finally managed to free it, it was too late. Inside, George had suffocated. The heavy, reinforced barrel, meant to protect him, had instead sealed his tragic fate. In a cruel twist of irony, the very creation that was supposed to safeguard him had become his prison. Yet amidst the sorrow, there was a glimmer of hope. Sonny Boy, George's pet turtle, emerged from the ordeal unharmed. The turtle became a symbol of resilience, featured in news stories and children's books. Although George's ambitions had ended in heartbreak, Sonny Boy's survival brought a small measure of recognition to the man who sought to conquer the falls. Today, George's barrel is on display at Niagara Falls, a somber reminder of the dangers of challenging nature. Fast forward to August 5th, 1951. William Red Hill Jr., the son of a local legend, stood at the edge of the Niagara River, staring at the violent currents below. Red Hill Sr., a renowned riverman, had long cautioned people about the unpredictable and dangerous nature of the falls, and had even warned George Stathakis. But Red Jr., desperate to live up to his father's legacy, saw the falls as his path to redemption. Red Hill Jr. had tried numerous times to match his father's fame, but nothing seemed to work. Financial troubles and personal struggles weighed heavily on him. The legacy of his father, once a revered figure, was fading, and Red Jr. was desperate to restore it. His solution? A daring stunt. Red Hill Jr. would go over the falls in a homemade device he called The Thing. Unlike the carefully crafted barrels of previous daredevils, Red's contraption was a reckless hodgepodge of inner tubes, canvas straps, and fishing nets. It was a crude and untested design, far from the rigid, reinforced barrels that had successfully survived the falls in the past. Despite expert warnings, Red was determined to proceed. The contraption, a jumble of mismatched materials, drifted toward the edge of the falls. The audience watched, a mix of disbelief and excitement on their faces, as the vessel was swept over the falls. The deafening roar drowned out all other sounds as the device plunged into the churning waters below. Pieces of the thing began to surface, shredded inner tubes, broken canvas, and twisted fishing nets. Red Hill Jr. had not survived. His body was found the next day, battered and broken beyond recognition. The incident sent shockwaves through the community. What had been intended as a bold attempt to revive the Hill legacy ended in a tragic loss of life. The tragedy led to stricter regulations on stunts at Niagara Falls, marking the end of an era in daredevilry. While Red Hill Jr.'s name may have been lost to the current, his death ultimately made Niagara a safer place for future thrill seekers. On July 9, 1960, 40-year-old James Honeycutt, a contractor from Raleigh, North Carolina, embarked on a seemingly peaceful boat ride with two children, 7-year-old Roger Woodward and his 17-year-old sister, Diane. The trio launched from Lynch Trailer Camp, about 5 miles upstream from Niagara Falls, in a small aluminum boat. The outing started innocuously, with Jim pointing out scenic views of the river. But disaster struck when the boat's engine failed, leaving them powerless against the river's mighty current. As the boat drifted towards the falls, Jim fought to keep the children safe, ensuring their life jackets were securely fastened. The boat struck a rock and capsized, throwing the 3 passengers into the roaring rapids. Jim managed to hold on to young Roger, but Diane was swept away. She clung to the overturned boat before being pulled under, only to later be rescued near Terrapin Point by truck driver John Hayes, with help from tourist John Quattrocchi. Meanwhile, Jim and Roger were carried towards the falls. In a final act of selflessness, Jim pushed Roger away, perhaps hoping that the boy's lighter weight would give him a better chance of survival. At 12:55 p.m., both Jim and Roger went over the falls. Remarkably, Roger survived the plunge, his life jacket keeping him afloat. The Maid of the Mist crew rescued Roger, the first known person to survive an unprotected plunge over the falls. Jim Honeycutt, however, was not as fortunate. His body was recovered 3 days later, about a quarter mile downstream. Roger's survival became a miracle of Niagara Falls, and a plaque near Terrapin Point commemorates Jim's bravery and sacrifice. His final act saved the children's lives, but at the cost of his own. Kirk Jones made history in 2003 when he became the first person to survive a plunge over Niagara Falls without any protective gear. The fall had nearly claimed his life, but against all odds, he emerged with nothing more than minor injuries. His survival was hailed as a miracle, and for a time, he was thrust into the media spotlight. However, Kirk's brief fame came with consequences. He was fined and banned from Canada for life. Despite the punishment, Kirk seemed to feel a deep connection to the falls, a bond he couldn't shake. In the years following his first fall, he spoke frequently of returning, determined to prove that he could survive the impossible once more. In April 2017, he devised a plan to make another attempt. This time he purchased a large plastic ball, the type used in zorbing, and believed it would protect him during the fall. With his pet boa constrictor, Misty, by his side, Kirk launched the ball into the river above the falls, hoping to turn his second stunt into a career-defining moment. Witnesses saw the ball drifting towards the edge of the falls, but when the ball went over, it vanished. The ball was later recovered, empty. Rescue teams were dispatched, but this time the falls showed no mercy. The US Coast Guard recovered his body on June 2nd, 2017, about 12 miles downstream. His pet snake, Misty, was never recovered. Kirk Jones, the man who had once survived the impossible, was claimed by the falls once again. It was a summer day in 1981 when 28-year-old Dunia Sayeg and her family visited Niagara Falls on the Canadian side. Dunia, her husband Rafik, and their 3 children were looking forward to a day of fun at one of the world's most famous landmarks. But what began as a pleasant outing soon turned into a devastating tragedy that would forever change their lives. Dunia cradled her infant son, Hessam, in her arms as they approached the stone railing near Horseshoe Falls. The baby, only 2 months old, had a mild respiratory condition, but was otherwise healthy. What happened next would remain controversial for years to come. According to witnesses, Dunia suddenly staggered backward, appearing dizzy. In that brief moment, Hessam slipped from her grasp and fell over the edge of the railing, swept away by the powerful current. The infant was carried over the 162-foot drop of the falls. Despite frantic efforts, Hessam's body was never recovered. The incident, initially believed to be a tragic accident, took a shocking turn when Dunia was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. Investigators questioned her version of events, but after a lengthy trial, the judge dismissed the charges, citing a lack of evidence to support the claim that Dunia had intentionally harmed her child. Though legally exonerated, Dunia was forever changed. The loss of her child haunted her, and she was left to grapple with the grief of a tragedy that was not fully understood. The story of Hessam Sayeg remains one of the most haunting in Niagara Falls history, a reminder of the power of nature and the human cost of one fateful moment. Niagara Falls stands as a powerful symbol of nature's beauty and danger, claiming the lives of those who dared to challenge its force. These stories of ambition, tragedy, and resilience serve as poignant reminders of the fine line between human courage and the uncontrollable power of nature.